What if becoming rich has nothing to do with earning more, but with needing less? Most people spend their lives chasing money, working harder and buying more, and yet, many of them still feel stressed, overwhelmed, and constantly behind. Minimalism is often misunderstood. Some see it as an aesthetic. Others think it's about owning almost nothing. But for many people, minimalism does something far deeper. It quietly changes how you relate to money. And at the same time, it changes how you experience your mind. In this video, we'll explore two very different kinds of wealth. The first is financial. How needing less can reduce pressure, create breathing room, and bring stability without earning more. The second is mental. The kind of richness that comes from calm, presence, and a life that finally feels manageable. By the end of this video, you may realize something unexpected. That the feeling of being rich often appears long before the bank account ever changes. And once you see it, it becomes very difficult to unsee. Before we talk about peace of mind, clarity, or calm, we need to start somewhere more practical. Because for many people, stress doesn't begin in the mind. It begins in the bank account. Bills arriving faster than income. A constant feeling of catching up. The quiet anxiety of not knowing where your money actually goes. Minimalism doesn't start by telling you to become detached from money. It starts by changing your relationship with it. Not through extreme saving or deprivation, but through awareness. When you begin to need less, something subtle happens. Expenses soften. Pressure eases. And money stops leaking away in dozens of unnoticed decisions. This is where the first kind of richness appears. Not abundance, but space. So before we explore how minimalism can calm the mind, let's first look at how it quietly brings financial breathing room. That breathing room doesn't come from earning more. It comes from choosing differently. Not in one big decision, but in the small, ordinary moments of daily life. It's deciding not to eat out again this week. Not because you can't, but because you choose to stay in. To cook something yourself and to take your time. To put care into a simple meal and discover that it tastes better. Not because it's less expensive, but because it was made with attention. It's realizing that food can be an experience, without coming from a restaurant. Minimalism doesn't remove pleasure. It often brings it back. It's choosing to repair something instead of replacing it. Having a zipper fixed. A chair tightened. An old object given another life. Not because you're trying to save every dollar, but because not everything needs to be new to be valuable. And slowly, your home stops asking for upgrades. It stops demanding more. You no longer chase the next purchase to feel comfortable where you already are. It's saying no to expensive outings that promise happiness, but often leave you tired and overstimulated, and saying yes to smaller things instead. A walk after dinner. A quiet morning with coffee. A book you already own. A moment that costs nothing, and yet stays with you longer. When life becomes simpler, it also becomes cheaper. But more importantly, it becomes lighter. Money is no longer spent trying to escape your days. Because your days no longer feel like something you need to escape from. And that is how financial breathing room grows. Not through restriction, but through intention. And then, something else begins to happen. Not all at once. Not in a way that draws attention. But quietly. You start to notice that your bank balance doesn't fall as quickly anymore. At the end of the month, there is something left. At first, it's small. Almost unnoticeable. But the next month, it's still there. And the month after that, a little more joins it. Not because you suddenly became disciplined. Not because you forced yourself to save. But because your life simply costs less to live. And over time, that quiet difference begins to matter. That money can be used differently. Not to buy more, but to create stability. You can build a buffer. Something that softens an emergency. Something that lets you sleep more calmly at night. And once that foundation is there, choices begin to open. Maybe you can reduce your working hours. Imagine what it would feel like if you could work one day less. You reclaim your own time. Time that gives you energy instead of taking it. Or maybe you choose to put that money toward your home. Paying down your mortgage faster. Watching the weight of long-term debt slowly lift from your shoulders. Not because you're chasing wealth, but because you're reducing dependence. And with every payment, something shifts. The future feels less tight and less demanding. You begin to realize that freedom doesn't always come from earning more. Sometimes it comes from owing less. And that realization changes how you see money forever. It stops being something you chase. It becomes something that supports the life you want to protect. And this is when many people notice something unexpected. They feel richer. Not because their lifestyle grew, but because their options did. And when your options grow, something inside you begins to settle. The constant urgency fades. The feeling that everything must happen now softens. You are no longer making decisions from fear. Fear of running out, fear of falling behind, or fear of never catching up. Because when your life is simpler, your mind has less to defend. There is less noise asking for your attention. Less comparison and less pressure to prove that you are doing well enough. You stop measuring your life by what others seem to have, and start measuring it by how your days actually feel. Your thoughts slow down. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything is no longer happening at once. You begin to notice silence again. The kind that feels spacious. Mornings feel less rushed. Evenings feel more complete. You are present for things you used to miss, while mentally planning the next obligation. And slowly, your relationship with time changes. You stop treating rest as something to earn. You stop postponing peace until later. Because later no longer feels necessary. Minimalism, at this point, is no longer about objects or money. It becomes internal. Your nervous system begins to relax. Because it is no longer constantly preparing for loss. And in that calm, something unexpected appears. Gratitude. Not forced, not practiced, but natural. You start to feel rich in ordinary moments. A quiet afternoon or a familiar routine. A life that fits the energy you actually have. This is the second kind of richness. Not visible or measurable, but deeply felt. And once you experience it, you understand why so many people say the same thing. They didn't simplify their life to have less. They did it to finally feel enough. And maybe that is what being rich was meant to feel like all along. Not louder. Not faster. Not more. But quieter. A life that doesn't constantly ask for upgrades. A mind that doesn't wake up already behind. Days that don't need escaping from. Minimalism doesn't give you everything. It simply removes what stands in the way. Until what remains finally feels like enough. And perhaps the question was never how much more you could earn, but how little you truly need to live a life that feels free. And if that is true, then what would your life look like if you stopped chasing more and started protecting what already gives you peace? What would your days feel like if they cost a little less energy, a little less money, a little less of yourself? Take a moment to think about that. Not to change everything at once. Not to have the answers yet. Just to notice. Because every quieter life begins with a small choice. And you don't have to get it perfect. You only have to begin.